Is as close as we could get for you. Green machine, I think that's the way to go.
Hey Campbell.
Hey Phil, how you doing?
Tim, how are you?
How are you?
Just been in contact with the office, so I wanted to have a chat about the year ahead for you. They told me you're picking up a new car.
Well, I'm just about to receive the keys and from Campbell, and
there you go. Yeah, well done.
If you like, you can be the first to have a ride in it with me.
Let's go.
Okay.
All the very best, Tim.
Thanks again. Thanks, Campbell.
Tim, Canberra this year, when they're actually put to the test, I suppose the real testing time is going to be during that rep season, that important rep time.
Yeah, I've got on record, Phil, as saying that the biggest problem for us is going to be the rep season, particularly if the series in New Zealand happens to be a 1-1 draw, or we'll lose our key people for 2 games.
Have you contemplated the fact that for that New Zealand series that you might be losing up to 10 players? I mean, now that you've got those New Zealanders and they seem to be firing.
When you're talking about nightmare stuff now, 10 players, if we lose that, it'd be nice to think that all those guys will represent, but if we lose as many as that, then it might come down to, asking you to pull on a jumper, mate.
I probably could. Tim, the car certainly gets along when put to the test. I've enjoyed the ride. As far as the Raiders are concerned, when put to the test this year, what are you expecting from the side? Where do you hope to finish up?
Well, we've been concentrating real hard on our defence, Phil, and been saying publicly now for a time that last year with 20 points and an average against was nowhere near good enough for a team with semi-final aspirations. And so on a week-to-week basis, our defence in the long term to make the semi-finals obviously would be our aim, as it is every team's aim, I suppose. And then as we go along the track, if we've been good enough, we'll be aiming for the top 3.
As I said, it's been a smooth ride this afternoon. Let's hope 1993 can be just as smooth for the Raiders.
Thanks very much, mate.
The spots in that final 5. Brisbane haven't lost anything, in my opinion, from last year, particularly player strength. There's 2. Canberra have improved since last year, and if they stay healthy, that'll be 3. I reckon Newcastle will be 4. And I'm not sure where the other one, it might be West or Canterbury, but that's, a fearless prediction, I guess, in some ways, but I think, there's only one certainty that it will be there.
Answer to our Brain Buster competition on the back of an envelope and send it to Classic Sportswear Brain Buster competition, PO Box 4444, Wollongong 2500. And today's Brain Buster is name one of 2 new Kiwi recruits in the Raiders side this season. Parramatta had wins in round 1. Down the bottom of the table, and just running through those quickly, Penrith, the Gold Coast, Balmain, Cronulla, Newcastle, Canberra, Manly and Souths yet to register points. As far as round 1 was concerned, Bob Linder, your first game with the Steelers, how did it feel pulling on the Steelers jersey for the first time?
Oh, it was great. It was a nice way to kick the season off, particularly with a new club, with a convincing win like that. I think, it was a reasonably hot day, and particularly in the first half, we had a fair amount of the ball, which helped our cause, and it was just nice I think the most pleasing factor about the whole thing was that we didn't let them over the line to score a try. Souths are a team that can score tries, and if they happen to get their nose in front, they can be very dangerous. But we controlled the whole affair pretty well.
You're working with a lot of young guys here around you, aren't you? There's a lot of young talent in that pack. A few players that I've been really impressed with. One particular, John Cross, but there are a lot of youngsters there.
Yeah, those guys gained a tremendous amount of experience from what they did last year, making it through to the finals, and I think that's going to show in the future.
Take on Brisbane, of course, that game to be played in New Zealand. Canberra take on Penrith at the stadium, an important one for the Raiders and for the Panthers too. Gold Coast, Illawarra, Newcastle West, East Norths, St George, Balmain. The Sharks do battle with the Eels, and Manly face up against Souths. Of course, we saw on Friday night the Raiders stepped out for the first time at Bruce Stadium, John, and went down to St George. The Raiders were favoured to take out that match. They're going to have some problems if they play like that for the rest of the season.
Yeah, they sure have, Phil. I doubt whether we'll see that, but they did remind me so much of '92, the way they performed. Pardon me. I thought they'd win the game handsomely, but when they were needed, they weren't scrambling in defence. St George never gave up. It's history. We know what happened, losing a player so early in the game, and it was just odds on then that Canberra must win. Now, Ricky Stewart was out, but one man can't turn a game that I saw last Friday night to that extent.
Teams certainly do rise to the occasion, don't they? I mean, as far as losing that player, losing Walker, they tended to really pick up the pace after
Yes, they did. And their work rate was incredible. And this is what was not happening with Canberra. They were coming in spurts. See, Mal had a sound game, but only sound. They looked to him to have better than a sound game. There's too many players having starting and stopping, and they're not just putting the pressure on the attacking play with their defence. And this is where St George found holes. Like, while I was watching the game, I thought that St George had 14 players, not 12. Just how it came up. Now, Tim Sheens has got his hands full, mate, I can tell you that now, because he's got to lift these guys. And guys like Bradley Clyde when he comes back, Daly when he gets a little bit more rhythm in his game. Of course, Mal Meninga's work rate's got to be lifted. And, of course, Ricky Stewart being fit, then we'll see a different Canberra side. Now, there's a cluster of 4 or 5 players that are so important to Canberra. Now, when they don't perform, the rest of the guys don't perform. I can't tell you why, and I doubt whether Tim Sheens can tell you why as well. Those guys must perform, and then the rest of the team will follow. St George followed a few players like young Scott Goulet and so forth, and they just followed, and they were relentless with their attack. And, of course, holes appeared.
Of course, we touched on Ricky Stewart there. Ricky's been putting in a lot of work this week to try and get himself back on the paddock. Let's see how he's gone.
When Stewart was forced to leave the field against West in the Challenge Cup final, he feared the worst. This week, the star half has been working towards making a return. But even after Canberra's disappointing performance against St George, he won't be rushing the comeback.
I don't want to have to play at 80% or so. I want to come back and make sure I'm 100% fit, because it might only mean that I've got to miss one more game and then come back at being 100% fit.
Stewart looked more than impressive when put to the test this week. He is showing no signs of the groin injury. A series of tests this evening, the final hurdle.
No, there's no fatigue at all, and I trained about 85% last night, ran about 85%, and I was very happy with that, and it's coming on quite well. It's just a matter, it's a matter now if I can take off at 100% and sidestep and run in different angles, so I'll know that on Thursday night.
Giant prop Darren Fritz was also put through a solid workout during the week. A knee ligament strain will keep him off the field this weekend, but given plenty of rest, he may be available for a round 3 clash with Balmain.
And, of course, the Raiders without Darren Fritz, but Ricky Stewart is back. John, how do you see them this week against the Panthers?
Well, Canberra can't afford to lose, and I don't think they will. They both had their problems last week, both playing at home. I'm referring to Canberra and Penrith. They both come away with no points. And they're 2 high-profile sides that can't afford to slip further down the ladder, particularly Canberra, because they're playing their second match at home in a row. Tim Sheens, well, he's got to look on players like Gary Belcher, Mal Meninga, Ricky Stewart, Laurie Daly, to give that little bit extra. And I mean that. Possibly you could exempt Ricky Stewart. He wasn't playing last week. His form's been excellent right throughout the Challenge Cup. But they've got to virtually put their best foot forward and show an example, like St George did last week when they were in deep trouble. I believe Canberra's got the side. It's there. Meninga's got to really push himself the full 80 minutes. And when they're in trouble defending, they've got to scramble and not hope. You can't, have any joy on hope. You've got to get out there and do it. I believe they will. They're too good a side to get beaten 2 times in a row at home. I reckon Canberra will win and win it quite handsomely. I think Penrith have got bigger problems than what people really realise.
Of course, with the exception of Stewart, depending on sort of tonight's test, we'll just run through that side, the Canberra side. There's no changes there from last week. Gary Belcher, Brett Mullins, Mal Meninga, David Boyle, Sean Hoppy, Laurie Daly at 5'8", Ricky Stewart, Paul Osborne, Steve Walters, John Lomax, David Furner, Darren Fritz, Jason Croker, and your 3 reserves there, Corvo, Pongia and young Wesley coming up from the under-21s. Bob, the Steelers, round 2. Firstly, with the East and Norths match, which is being played on the Saturday. John, how do you see that one going?
I think East will carry on with their good form, Phil. They're a very good side, as they were last year early. They accounted for Newcastle. That's history now. They're playing North Sydney. Their best performances are at North Sydney Oval. This game's being played at the Sydney Football Stadium. I believe that Eastern Suburbs will be too well equipped, too fast. They've got too much up their sleeve to go down to North Sydney. I think they'll win it and win it handsomely.
Bob?
Well, I agree with John there. I think that, East, certainly their early season form is tremendous, and it was last year. And like I said before, that no one expected him to beat Newcastle at Newcastle last week, and you can't go past that sort of form at this particular point in the season.
Oh, the TV match, of course, Canterbury-Brisbane on the Friday night, John.
Well, I like the Broncos here. I think they'll win most of their games. They're a very, very good outfit. You know, Canterbury-Bankstown are not showing the enthusiasm, I didn't think, in their first game against Balmain, although they won, as they did show early in the Challenge Cup. They will get a little better as the season goes on. But the Broncos, they've just got too much as far as I can see, and I think they'll win the game and win it quite well.
The Canberra-Penrith match on the Saturday, Bob.
Well, I'm tipping Canberra here. You know, I think last week Canberra didn't do themselves any favours there. When St George lost Andrew Walker, Canberra should have controlled the match, but virtually gave the ball over to St George, and St George had the ball for a majority of the game, and that was their downfall. I think they'll improve 100% this weekend against an understrength Penrith, so Canberra to win. John, a quick tip on that one?
Oh, I think Canberra will win easily. I do believe that.
Gold Coast Illawarra, I don't suppose we really need to ask you, Bob, do we?
No, it's...
that he'd be fit, which did turn a few stomachs. The Laurie Daly dislocation, I think it turned his stomach as well. I was speaking to him in the change rooms afterwards. He wasn't impressed with it at all. No, well, you know, Canberra really showed that they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. I was starting to wonder after the first match because, you know, they reminded me so much of 1992 when things really didn't happen for them. You know, being in the grand final the previous year and then not being there even in the final five as it turned out at the end of 1992. But they just cast all that aside last week. Penrith are a pretty good outfit. They do have some problems as well. Internal, we've read and so forth regarding a few little upheavals, the coach, the halfback. We won't delve into all of that. They've lost a couple of players. When you look at Penrith's side on paper, there does appear to be a few flaws in their complete makeup, the way I can see it. A little bit of a kink in the armour, but still you can't take anything away from Canberra because they put it to the Penrith side. Well, they won 18-8. I think there's a lot more wins in store for the Raiders. The Illawarra side, they're facing the same problem as Canberra. There are a few injury problems there, and that side, as it was chosen on Tuesday night.
Things and you know, that sort of the thought of someone running at me and me having to hit them with my shoulder, it doesn't really worry me.
In the national Penrith, Clyde has been given the all-clear by medical staff and will play a major role in putting Canberra's premiership charge back on the rails.
After a strong session last night, Raiders coaching staff looked at the possibility of rushing Clyde back for tomorrow's clash with Penrith. The star lock arrived at a team luncheon today with the all-clear from his doctor. Bradley Clyde set to rejoin his Canberra teammates.
Much to my delight, Tim Sheens and the doctors have all come to agree that my shoulder is pretty good and I get the chance to have a run around.
Clyde will start on the bench tomorrow, but will be given his chance early on. It's a crunch game for the Raiders. A change in attitude after last week's drubbing will be apparent.
Well, I'd like to think there's a fair amount of urgency there. They'll have to be because they'll come up here the same way. So it should be a very tough game. But as I say, we've got no excuses. We've got to get out, and it's our home ground and our home crowd. So we've got to play a lot better than we did last week. A lot better.
It's been well over 12 months since Canberra fielded their #1 side. With the big names back, the Raiders should prove too strong. The Panthers desperate for points after their shock first-round loss to Parramatta.
Finals time.
Shoulder, and the Raiders reacted by immediately finding a place for him on the fresh reserves bench for tomorrow's match.
Bradley Clyde's imminent return to the game has taken the Raiders by surprise. The test lock wasn't even considered for the game against Penrith when the team was announced on Tuesday. Bradley Clyde hasn't played since the World Cup final at Wembley when he dislocated his shoulder. That caused him to have a total shoulder reconstruction, and the diagnosis then was he'd be missing for at least the first 4 matches of the season. With only 1 round gone, Clyde is back in the green jumper, a tribute to his dedication.
I put in a fair bit of work, you know. I've probably done 2 or 3 sessions a day, you know, and
no, I'm pretty pleased with my recovery.
With Clyde on the bench and Ricky Stewart at half, the Raiders take on a much more impressive look, adding to their resolve the memory of last week's collapse against St George.
We didn't perform too well last Friday night, and so we were very keen to make amends and make sure individually and as a team that we performed up to our best.
The Raiders are expecting a bumper crowd to flow into Bruce Stadium tomorrow, especially as all children will be admitted free to the outer.
Australia's highest
with Balmain. Both have calf strains and the pair will receive treatment throughout the week. Meanwhile, 5'8" Laurie Daly has been cleared of any major damage to a dislocated finger following Saturday's 18-8 win over Penrith.
There were a number of minor injury concerns to come out of Saturday's win. Laurie Daly's finger dislocation appeared the worst. X-rays today gave the all clear, and he will take his place against the Tigers on Friday night.
It didn't feel too bad until I had a look, and as soon as I had a look, I felt like fainting.
Front rower Paul Osborne is another who will be closely watched this week. A calf strain is expected to improve before kick-off against Balmain. While the 2 points were pleasing for Canberra, the successful return of Brad Clyde from injury has boosted the entire Raiders lineup.
You know, just his work rate and his effectiveness, especially in our red zone, hitting out, you know, just always makes yards, and certainly glad to have him back.
I enjoyed running out there and making a few tackles. I've waited for a while now to get onto the field and play, so I enjoyed it.
In the weeks ahead, Clyde will make a big difference. If Osborne and winger Sean Hoppy come through fitness checks tomorrow night, it could cause problems for coach Tim Sheens. With Jason Croker likely to switch back to the wing, he must now make changes to the side.
All right, well, the try of the weekend.
Queanbeyan and Jason for Friday night's clash with Balmain. Tim Sheens named his side this afternoon, but there are several players doubtful. Sean Hoppy, Ricky Stewart and Paul Osborne are causing the most concern, along with David Boyle, who's been dropped to the reserves bench.
With Bradley Clyde back for Canberra, Jason Croker has been moved to the wing. In a backline reshuffle, David Boyle winds up on the interchange bench, but carrying a hip injury, he is a big query.
I went to the physio yesterday and today.